left for dead. The wind howled through the canyon, dry and bitter like the truth Elizabeth Carter had been denying for months. Dust clung to the hem of her skirt as she stumbled behind the covered wagon, her feet blistered from days of marching west. The horizon stretched endlessly, a cruel reminder of promises that were never meant to be kept. Samuel rode ahead, never once glancing back. His face, once soft with affection, now hardened with indifference. He had stopped calling her Lizzie long ago. Now, it was only Elizabeth, spoken like a burden. They had joined the settler caravan with dreams of land, prosperity, and a new beginning. But Elizabeth had come seeking more than land. She wanted warmth, partnership, a life not dictated by cruelty. Samuel, however, had changed on the trail. His obsession with gold and territory grew, while his patience with her dwindled. He whispered with other men at night and eyed younger women in the camp as if she were no longer his. On the 5th week of travel, her world shattered. The attack came just before dusk. Arrows pierced the air. 3 wagons set ablaze. Screams tore through the dust. But something was wrong. The attackers were unseen, the violence too neat, too calculated. Elizabeth ran to Samuel, only to see him standing still, untouched, calmly watching the chaos. "Run," she cried. He looked at her with something colder than hate. "Stay down," he ordered. Then darkness. When she woke, her head throbbed, and her side burned with pain. Her dress was torn. Blood, her own, matted her hair to the earth. Around her, silence. The wagons were gone, the fire reduced to smoldering ash. And Samuel, gone with them. He'd left her. No, worse, he had arranged it. The raid was a lie, a cover for murder. Her husband had abandoned her in the wild, hoping the desert would finish what he could not bring himself to do. She tried to scream, but no sound came. The shock numbed her voice, but not the betrayal. Dragging herself up, she scanned the desolate landscape. Cacti loomed like sentries. Vultures circled above. Her canteen was gone, her shoes half-torn. There was no food, no compass, no hope. Her only chance was to follow the broken wagon tracks that curved eastward, but her vision swam with every step. Pain radiated through her ribcage. She collapsed beneath a gnarled mesquite tree, her breath shallow, the sun stealing her strength. Samuel's face haunted her, the way he stood unmoved as she bled. She had loved him once, trusted him. Now she would die for it. But the desert was not finished with her yet. From the rocks above, eyes watched, sharp, cautious, unblinking. Tocho, a Navajo warrior on a solitary hunt, had seen the smoke miles away. He expected to find the usual, settlers burning the land, trespassing through sacred ground. Instead, he found a woman, pale, blooded, alone. Tocho knew better than to interfere with settler troubles. But something made him stop. Maybe it was the way her hands twitched with the instinct to live, or the way her body, battered and weak, still tried to sit upright. She wasn't dead yet. He descended quietly. The woman didn't stay. Her lips were cracked, her breathing shallow. Her ribs were visible through the torn bodice. He crouched beside her, brushed a strand of blood-caked hair from her face. She flinched. He said nothing. With swift efficiency, he lifted her into his arms. She weighed little more than a sack of grain. Her skin burned with fever. She murmured something, "Don't leave me," before slipping into unconsciousness. Tocho carried her toward his shelter, a small canyon encampment tucked between ancient cliffs. He didn't know who she was, didn't know what dangers she might bring. But the land had not taken her, and neither would he. He didn't yet know her name. She didn't know she'd already begun to forget his silence. The warrior's mercy. Elizabeth awoke to warmth, an unfamiliar sensation after the cold betrayal that had nearly taken her life. The ceiling above her was stone, curved and shadowed. Smoke curled gently from a fire nearby, its soft crackling the only sound in the cave-like space. For a brief moment, she believed herself to be dreaming. Then came the pain. Her ribs screamed as she shifted. Her lips were parched. Her stomach growled with hollow defiance. She tried to sit up, but a firm hand pressed gently against her shoulder. A figure crouched beside her, tall, silent, composed. His dark eyes studied her carefully, not as a threat or possession, but as a puzzle. His skin was sun-worn, his expression calm but unreadable. Long black hair, tied back in leather cord, framed a strong face that showed no cruelty, only caution. She blinked slowly. "Where?" He said nothing, only handed her a carved wooden bowl filled with warm broth. It smelled of herbs and meat, wild, unfamiliar, but nourishing. She stayed at it, confused. "Eat," he said simply, the first word spoken. His voice was low, deliberate. She obeyed without question, sipping carefully. The taste flooded her senses, and tears sprang to her eyes, not from the flavor, but from the undeniable truth. Someone had saved her. For days, Elizabeth drifted between sleep and pain, her dreams a blur of wagon wheels, fire, and Samuel's cold stare. But each time she woke, the warrior was there, quiet, watchful. He brought her food, fresh water, and even crushed herbs he applied to her bruises with surprising tenderness. He never asked her name, never demanded hers. On the fourth morning, her strength returning, she spoke first. "Why did you help me?" Tocho looked up from where he was carving wood by the fire. He didn't answer immediately. Then, softly, "You were breathing. The land hadn't taken you." Elizabeth stared at him. Most men wouldn't have bothered. His gaze met hers. Most men forget the land watches and remembers. His words struck deeper than she expected. He returned to his carving. The conversation, though brief, had unsettled something in her. Not fear, but respect. This man wasn't a savage, as Samuel had often claimed of native tribes. He was deliberate, intelligent, and burdened with a quiet pain she couldn't yet name. Over the next few days, Elizabeth began to walk slowly with the help of a carved stick. The canyon shelter was hidden, protected by sandstone cliffs and dense brush. Birds called from high ledges. A nearby stream trickled over smooth rocks. It was a world away from the violence of the settler camps. She watched Tocho hunt with a bow, skin rabbits with swift precision, and speak softly to the wind when he thought she couldn't hear. He wasn't just surviving here. He was living with the land, not against it. One afternoon, as the sun painted the canyon walls with gold, she sat near the fire and finally offered her name. "I'm Elizabeth," she said, not expecting a response. He didn't look at her. "Tocho." They sat in silence. "I was married," she added. "He left me there to die." Still no surprise on his face. "He planned it," she whispered. "I think he wanted the land to kill me so he wouldn't have to." Tocho looked up. His eyes softened, but his voice was careful. "Then he was already dead, before he left you." The words stole her breath. She nodded, barely. That night, Tocho placed a deer hide near the fire so she could sleep warmer. He didn't touch her, didn't ask anything more, but she watched the way he moved, always aware, always calm. A protector. As she drifted into sleep, a single thought pulsed through her aching body. She was no longer alone. Tocho, for reasons unknown, had chosen to save her. And Elizabeth, though still wrapped in grief and confusion, could no longer deny the flicker of something dangerous and unfamiliar inside her. Hope, truths, and temptation. By the second week, Elizabeth could walk without leaning on the carved stick. Her wounds had begun to heal, though her heart remained a battleground of guilt, confusion, and awakening desire. The canyon felt less like a prison and more like a sanctuary, and its quiet rhythm slowly replaced the fear that had once lived in her bones. Tocho continued to speak little, but he no longer avoided her eyes. He had started teaching her words, Navajo words, for fire, sky, water, bird. She repeated them softly, almost reverently. She didn't know why it mattered so much to him, but she could sense something in his silences. He wanted her to understand his world, not just live inside it. One evening, after roasting a rabbit over a small fire, Elizabeth found herself staring into the flames longer than necessary. Tocho sat beside her, sharpening a flint blade. The shadows danced over his face, outlining the quiet strength she had come to depend on. "I dreamed of him again," she said, not looking at him. "Samuel." Tocho said nothing. He was smiling. Not the kind he used to give me. The other kind. The kind that made me feel smaller than date. Tocho paused his blade work. Elizabeth's voice cracked. He said I was weak. That no one would ever keep me. That he only married me because my father promised him land. Tocho's eyes flickered with a fire of their own. And do you still believe him? She hesitated. Sometimes. Then he still lives in your mind, he said. That is worse than his body. She turned toward him. And what about you? What lives in yours? His hands stilled. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then softly, a wife. She was taken by men who looked like you. She screamed my name, but I was too far. The words were few, but they hit her like a wave. I'm sorry, Elizabeth whispered. She wore green, he added. Every spring. Like new grass. Elizabeth couldn't speak. The ache in her chest deepened, not just for her own loss, but for his. Somehow, in their brokenness, they mirrored each other. Two people who had been thrown away by love that never truly loved them back. They sat in silence, letting the fire crackle between them. It wasn't cold, but Elizabeth pulled her shawl tighter, not for warmth but for protection against the feelings swirling inside her. He was nothing like Samuel. Tocho's strength didn't come from dominance or control. It came from restraint. From the way he listened more than he spoke. From how he looked at her, not like a possession, but like a person slowly returning to herself. Later that night, a storm rolled in. Rain hammered the cliffs. Lightning split the sky. Thunder echoed like distant gunfire. Elizabeth curled beneath a hide, heart racing from memories of fire and screaming horses. She shut her eyes tight, trying to breathe. Suddenly, a shadow knelt beside her. Tocho didn't speak. He placed a second hide over her shoulders and sat down beside her, his back to the wind. His presence was a silent wall between her and the storm. I thought I'd die out there, she said. You did, he replied. The woman who lived before, she is gone. Elizabeth looked at him, tears in her eyes. And who am I now? He finally turned to her. Someone who survived. Lightning flashed across his face, revealing the truth in his expression. He wasn't just comforting her. He understood her. Their hands touched beneath the hide, not by accident. Elizabeth didn't pull away. His fingers, calloused from years of war and hunting, were gentle as they grazed hairs. She felt the heat rise in her chest. Her breath caught. But Tocho withdrew his hand. We are not ready, he said quietly. Not yet. It wasn't rejection. It was something rarer, respect. Elizabeth nodded. She lay back and closed her eyes. The storm continued outside, but inside, her heart beat quieter than it had in weeks. She didn't need saving anymore. She just needed time. His bride by firelight. The days grew longer, warmer. Elizabeth no longer marked time by dates or seasons, but by small, quiet victories. Her first snare set without guidance, her first words spoken in fluent Navajo, the first time she laughed without guilt. The woman who had been left to die in the wilderness was fading, replaced by someone stronger, someone freer. Tocho watched her transformation with quiet pride. He said little, but when he spoke, his words carried weight. They worked side by side now, not just as healer and patient, but as something deeper, something neither dared name aloud. Then the news arrived like a knife through calm water. A band of traders passed through the outer ridges, exchanging herbs for metal tools. One of them, a wiry man with a Kentucky accent, recognized Elizabeth. Yo Carter's wife, aren't you? He said, squinting. Thought you was dead. Samuel said you were lost in a raid. Elizabeth's blood turned cold. Is setting up a ranch now, the man continued. Married some young thing. Ain't even mourning proper. Tocho stood beside her, silent. She could feel his stillness like a storm held back by force of will. After the trader left, the world felt sharper, lighter, even. The last thread tethering her to Samuel had snapped. He's gone, she said that evening by the fire, her voice steady. Whatever hold he had, it's over. I was never a wife to him. I was property, a tool. Tocho added a branch to the flames, then stopped speaking his name. Let the fire eat it. She watched the sparks rise into the canyon sky. What would you call me now, then? Tocho met her gaze. Free. She stepped closer. And if I didn't want to be free? He stood slowly, towering yet still gentle in his movement. Then you would choose. A pause hung between them, trembling like the space between lightning and thunder. I choose this, Elizabeth whispered. You. Us. Tocho's hand reached for Hayes, not to pull or possess, but to offer. She took it. That night, Nalani came to them. The elder had been watching from afar, letting them grow on their own path. With the wisdom of generations in her eyes, she brought them blessings, beads, and soft-smoked cedar. She spoke few words in her native tongue, but Elizabeth understood. This was no formal ceremony, no grand declaration, just two broken souls choosing to share breath, fire, and future. The ritual was quiet. The wind stood still. Flames danced between them as they sat on opposite sides of the fire, then walked toward one another. Tocho brushed a thumb across Elizabeth's cheek, grounding her, anchoring her to the present. You are not mine to save, he said, but I am yours to stand beside. Tears slipped down her face, not from sadness, but from the purity of it. The clarity. They sat beneath the stars, wrapped in fur and silence. No need for rings or vows. The land itself bore witness. In that moment, Elizabeth became more than the widow Samuel had tried to erase. She became Tocho's equal, his partner, his bride. Later, as they lay beneath a hide, their hands entwined, she whispered, "Do you think it's possible to love again, after everything?" He kissed her knuckles. "Not again," he said, "for the first time." The fire burned low, but its warmth lingered through the night. And when the morning came, the sun found them together, whole, reborn, and unafraid of who they had once been.